Welcome to Hollywood, 1914. The film industry is booming, and the Nickelodeon theater is king. For a single nickel, audiences get a continuous stream of moving pictures. To keep those seats filled, early studios have to churn out short films at a breakneck pace, prioritizing sheer volume over artistic quality. The undisputed leader of this high-volume comedy market was Mack Sennett's Keystone Studios. Keystone operated as a frantic comedy factory. They relied on a strict assembly line production model, cranking out slapstick films rapidly and allowing almost zero room for individual artistic freedom. Enter a young, bare-faced British stage performer named Charlie Chaplin. He had just arrived in California from the prestigious Fred Karno vaudeville troupe in London. Chaplin brought with him a deeply rehearsed, highly nuanced approach to character-driven comedy. The culture clash was immediate. During his very first film, Making a Living, Chaplin infused his performance with the subtle comic routines he had perfected on stage. But director Henry Lerman deliberately cut Chaplin's best moments out of the final edit. Lerman would confess years later that he did it simply because he felt the new kid knew too much. Chaplin's theatrical rhythm required taking a moment to let a joke breathe and build organically. The Keystone machine required constant, disposable motion. The two styles collided completely. The situation worsened as Chaplin was passed to other directors. George Nichols, for instance, relied heavily on a single gag, grabbing the comedian by the neck and physically bouncing him from one scene to another. When Chaplin tried to suggest subtler character work, Nichols would just shout, "We have no time, no time." The breaking point arrived during the production of a short called Mabel at the Wheel. The studio brass demanded that Chaplin completely abandon his personal approach to do a flat imitation of their former star, Ford Sterling, who was famous for a highly exaggerated immigrant character. Adding to the friction, Mack Sennett worried that Chaplin looked far too young on screen to be taken seriously by audiences. Realizing he needed a distinct identity to stand out and to artificially age himself up to appease the studio, Chaplin decided to adopt a disguise, trying on a small, bristly mustache. He recognized a harsh reality. If he continued to passively follow his director's orders, he would be swallowed whole by the studio machine. His distinct comedic rhythm would disappear completely. To survive, Chaplin needed a tactical advantage. He realized that the only way to bypass jealous and impatient directors was to manipulate the editing process directly from in front of the lens. He tested the strategy on the set of Mabel's Strange Predicament. In his very first scene wearing the new Tramp costume, Chaplin deliberately packed the take with so much continuous, escalating physical business that it became impossible for the editor to physically splice the film without ruining the joke. Mack Sennett mandated that no shot run longer than 10 feet of film. Chaplin's opening take ran for 75 feet. When challenged, Chaplin asked, "If it's funny, does it really matter?" Sennett agreed, establishing a new rule. Laughs trumped technical policy. By weaponizing the length of a camera take, Chaplin effectively child-proofed his performances against aggressive editors. He protected his artistic intent and forced the rapid-fire studio to slow down to accommodate his pacing. He pushed the boundaries further in Kid Auto Races at Venice. Shot in a mere 45 minutes at an actual children's pushmobile race, the production was pure guerrilla filmmaking, dodging real crowds and stealing shots on the fly. Here, Chaplin openly broke one of early cinema's biggest rules by looking directly into the lens. Instead of acting within the plot, the tramp repeatedly blocks the cameraman, turns to face the viewers, and positions himself directly alongside the audience. But manipulating the camera from afar had its limits. Exhausted by the ongoing battles over his rhythm, Chaplin leveraged his rapidly growing popularity. He successfully negotiated with Mack Sennett for the explicit right to direct his own pictures, starting with a short titled Caught in the Rain. Wrestling the director's chair away from the established system was the only way for Chaplin to implement the character-driven pacing he had envisioned. With total creative control secured, Chaplin entered a phase of rapid prototyping. Operating at high speed, he used his newfound freedom to test and refine complex comedic theories on film. He pioneered a technique called comic transposition, taking a dangerous or specific object and using it in an entirely functional, absurdly incorrect way. In A Film Johnny, for example, he casually uses a loaded revolver to pick his teeth. He also began experimenting with tone. Instead of relying solely on physical gags, he injected genuine sentiment and higher emotional stakes into his stories, a shift he prototyped in the carefully structured short, The New Janitor. Then he directed Dough and Dynamite. This two-reeler went over budget and required 9 days of filming, but its inclusion of a labor strike signaled a shift toward films that referenced real-world social issues. It was technically sophisticated, and it went on to gross over $130,000 in its first year. Through this rapid iteration, Chaplin proved that film comedy did not have to rely exclusively on violence and chaos. It could be sophisticated and emotionally resonant. The culmination arrived with Tilly's Punctured Romance, recognized as Hollywood's first feature-length slapstick comedy. The film was built around a massive Broadway star, Marie Dressler. Yet, in a supporting role as a city slicker, Chaplin's presence stole the show. Critics noted that his camera antics were the essential feature that made the picture a hit. When the picture premiered, the industry reaction was immediate. Almost every motion picture producer pursued Chaplin, wanting to sign him to a contract that recognized his value as both a performer and a filmmaker. Chaplin's 1914 campaign introduced the Tramp to a global audience. By demanding control over writing, directing, and editing his own work, he dismantled the factory production model and established the individual performer as the film's primary creative authority.